Welcome to the podcast, People More Interesting Than Me. I'm your host, Michael Strumsky, where every week I host a new guest with unique professions, personal adversity, or even maybe a strong opinion or two. And if you haven't hit the 5 stars review on Apple Podcasts, please hit it now before you forget. Running a podcast is a surprising amount of work, and more reviews converts into a wider range of future guests. This week, I have the pleasure of talking to Christian of the Reeve Podcast. We discuss what it's like to reach 200 episodes and what it takes to make a good podcast. Christian explains what he's learned over the past 2 years and why he keeps going. Enjoy. And I haven't double checked, but are you, so 218, 3 years, that's 156 if you're going with no Christmases or anything like that. 52 times 3.
Okay, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I never thought about it like that.
So I mean, in theory, you've done, I can't do that one in my head, but obviously between like 1.5 and 2 episodes, no, like 1.5 episodes a week. That's awesome.
I tried to do like 2 twice a week, and that was just too much. I mean, anyone that does podcasting that's listening, you'll know exactly what I mean. Like, and depending on the level of effort you put into your production and editing, like I'm quite lazy on that front. Like I do the editing and the clipping and social media and all that jazz, but like I don't cut out all of the ums and ahs and shit. I like to keep it natural, like a conversation that you're just sitting at the bar and like hear two guys. Interesting. Like that's the vibe I like to give out. But you know, I get it. I get that a lot of people, like when I do the clips, I cut that shit out, for example. But yeah, it's how much you put in. And I think a lot of people, they set it up. It seems like a good idea. It seems like, oh, well, I want to make content. Oh, I'll do a podcast. Like it seems like a natural go-to. But then you start doing it and you realize the nature of it. And I think if you're going to do a podcast, you need to love it. Anything else, you're going to do it with passion. Like I love podcasting. I don't have a big audience. You know, I have people that follow me on Twitch. I have a little small community, you know, on Patreon, on all these platforms and stuff. And it's small and it's modest, and I work for those people, and we have fun, and it's a good time. And with the podcast, there's been different phases. There was a period when I kind of resented it and I didn't like it as much. And then you get past that, and then when you keep it simple and you just look at like, well, why do I do this? Why do I enjoy it? I enjoy it because like I get to meet amazing people. I get to share their stories and have amazing conversations with these people. I think it made me a better conversationist. You know, I mentioned to you earlier about, you know, it's important to listen. Oh my God, with podcasting and just conversations in general. Like I feel like a lot of the time you just throw a question, throw an idea, and then just let it happen. You know, and as long as the most important thing is you care and you're engaged. Like, for example, me coming onto your show, I wasn't stressed or worried. I'm like, I hope this guy has some sort of a plan. But other than that, I know I'm going to be fine because I do this all the time, and I'm most importantly willing to have a conversation. I'm not going to sit here and plug every single thing that I do because no one cares. Like, what people care about is this someone I should invest my time in? Does this person say anything interesting? Do they care? Are they authentic? That's a big thing in society right now. You see so many people putting on a persona of like, oh, we're doing this, oh, we're doing that, oh my God, this is amazing, 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 da, 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 da. And it's like, I like to showcase the reality of people, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I like to show that myself. I like to showcase that in the podcast. And I think with the podcast, as I said, it goes in stages. And right now, I probably enjoy it more now than I ever have before. And I think it's because I'm not worried anymore about like, oh, I hope this makes money one day. I hope this gets sponsored. I hope this gets heard by like a bunch of people. The main reason I want it to be heard above all else is because I think that people could actually get a lot from it, because I know I do. Like I love every time I do a podcast, I get excited. Every time I get to do an appearance, I get excited. I look forward to it. And I think if you're in that headspace, that is the perfect headspace to be in if you want to do a podcast.
I completely agree with all your thoughts, and I lied. I'm going to use this for the recording because it's really good stuff.
You can't lie to me. Can't lie to me.
I know. So 3 things, and I don't know if you have this issue about trying to remember all these amazing questions you have, but also being a good listener at the same time. It's like you're trying to multitask. I don't know if you ever I watch anime a lot, and sometimes you don't you're watching the screen because obviously it's a really good animation, but obviously in Japanese, so you're trying to multitask by watching the screen and you're trying to read and understand what's going on. So I feel like that's podcasting. Like you have to, just like you said earlier, you've got to be, it's like you're a child, but you still need to be the adult because you're having fun with the conversation, but you forget that you're the host and you still need to be and it's funny, it goes to 2 graphs that I heard when you were talking. There's the amount of, like, you were talking about editing. Like there's A, how much you want to edit and keep it real. And then there's B. Well, the other thing is like editing.
I heard someone recently saying this, like that they enjoyed editing. I thought, bullshit, dude.
Yeah.
I guess if you're a professional
Were they narcissists? Were they narcissists, these people?
No, they were editing for other people. You know,
because I hate my voice. It's not.
Oh yeah, same. Yeah.
It sounds like somebody took your voice and then threw them out at the bar and just beat the crap out of them. And they were also hungover. Can I mention that? And then that's my voice compared to yours.
No, you got a good voice, man. Don't put yourself down. But no, I appreciate what you're saying. Like, no one likes to hear it. I don't think any normal person is like, oh, I sound amazing. Like, you know, most people I think are modest and humble, aren't they? Like, I think for me, it's funny because I do like voice acting, right? And I rarely use like my actual speaking voice. I don't use anything but my voice, and it's for that reason because I don't like hearing my voice. I mean, I feel more comfortable now, but when I look back at like old clips of like how I used to talk or like how I used to be on my podcast, it's cringe, but it's growth, isn't it? Like you start from here and you suck because of course you suck because you've never done it before, and then you get better. You keep doing it and you get better. It's like, you know, I wouldn't recommend listening to my early episodes because they suck. But
Can I give you a perspective? Can I give you a perspective on that? Imagine you look back at those episodes and you didn't hear a difference. You'd feel even worse.
Yeah, no, that's worse. Yeah, that is
like, oh man, I haven't changed at all. Like, what have I been doing? You know, I mean, like, there's no progression. Like, I sound exactly like I do today. Like,
I remember going to a nightclub in like my first year of uni. This was years ago.
I love the way you guys say college, by the way. It's just so eloquent. Uni and college.
Well, just because we're lazy. We say uni. Yeah, but you guys are like college.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was on vacation from college, and I was in this nightclub in my local hometown, and I never go to nightclubs. Like I did at uni because it was uni, but I hate them. They're awful. I could rant about why they suck all day long, but let's not go there. So I'm in the middle of the dance floor and I'm looking around, and it's a pretty sorry state. It's getting to like early hours, and you've got like some dudes that are dancing with themselves tragically, like, you know, they desperately want.
I know the type. Yeah, they're there till like 1 after hour closing somehow.
And look, fair enough, man. If they're having a good time, I'm glad for them, but it looks painful to watch. And I was just looking around and judging myself. I'm like, why am I here? Like, I got called there by my cousin, but then he disappeared, and then I'm just there on my own. And I remember turning, and there's 2 people that I went to school with, and they're drunk out of their face, and they're just dancing around. They're having a good time, and they're like, "Oh my god, Christian, how you doing? Oh my god, so nice to see you." It's like I probably spoke maybe like 5 words to these guys in school, but like, of course, been drinking. Oh, we're best buddies. And I think the thing that struck me, and the reason why I brought it up, being relevant to our conversation, is that like by that point in my life, I was 21, 22, something like that. I had traveled a bit. I was obviously at university. I'd been in like a heavy metal band, few metal bands over the years. I'd done a fair bit already, not like loads, but I'd done a bit. Um, but most importantly, like I felt like I was going somewhere, I was doing something. And as I understand, they just not left our hometown, and I just didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I hadn't changed since school. And to be honest, like years ago, I used to be like, "Oh, that's so tragic, that's so bad, that's so like maybe it's even a bit funny." But like now, I just look at it like, no, like get out there, like just even if it's like you feel like, oh, it's too late. No, it's never too late. Go out, do something. Like give yourself these experiences so that it gives you a different perspective on life. And to be honest, it'll teach you more about yourself. Um, my oldest sibling just turned 18, and I just sent him a message today saying, "Go, like, listen, the next few years, make an effort to go traveling because you'll gain a different perspective on life and you'll learn about yourself, and this is really important." So yeah, self improvement and just general progression, I think, is always important. Like, I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and thank fuck for that.
Yeah.
Like you,
That's one of the big things I don't even think I've ever mentioned on the podcast is change. Like change is so it's that change is the only constant in life, which is just like an oxymoron and just makes you better. Like I completely agree with you. And I've seen that in my life, even though I'm not too far away. I'm like 45 minutes from where I grew up, but I've traveled. I understand what you're trying to say, because if you don't gain new perspective, how can you change? Because the world's going to change. Like it's not going to stay exactly the same. And it's boring if you just stay in that one thing. What are you going to say?
I want to say as well, like it makes you appreciate what you have. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with staying in your hometown and living in like a straightforward, humble life. Like, listen, if you're happy, if you're content, good. But I still recommend it. Like, even if you go away and you just miss home desperately, you just want to come back and you're like, oh, I'm never going to travel again. Fine, but at least you did it and you know, and you like exhausted an option, and it just reinforces your love. Like, I took the UK for granted for so long. I was annoyed, I was bitter, and I left. And within a year and a half, I was desperately homesick. And I wondered if it was maybe the grass is greener on the other side mentality. But when I finally came back, I was like, no, I just missed home. And I didn't appreciate it for what it is. And it's not perfect here, but I love the people. I love how silly this nation is, but I love how wonderful it is too. And you take the positives and the negatives, and there's a lot to be said for someone's homeland and what it means to you, maybe on like a spiritual level. Um, that's why I understand that when people are far from home and they miss home, like I feel that, I get that, I know that feeling, I know how hard it is.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you think of it on a bigger scale, we're just like children of the place where we grew up, to put it that way. Like it's what made you, your personality, your emotional state, your memories. It's what make you. So if you don't love home, I would imagine you had bad memories. You like had a bad environment and you wouldn't love home. That's the reason. And I think I talked to someone early on who their parents were like army brats. So they were home to the feeling of traveling and experiencing new feelings. Like they didn't really have a place. Like they're from the US, but they traveled to like Iceland. They traveled to like Indonesia. Like they didn't really have a home, but their home was like meeting new people. And I was like, that's actually really fascinating that you don't have a home where you
money though. They have the reverse. If you'd ask them like, what's your goal, they'd probably be like, oh, I want to have like home, I want to be like based somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because it's like, because it's set on paper, it sounds great, like, oh, traveling all the time, and like, wow,
Yeah.
that must have been great. Like, sure, but like actually what it would have looked like is every 6 months you make friends, you get settled, and then you have to move and change everything. And it's like, yeah, I don't know, that I think that would suck a little bit after a while.
I have a very weird question for you, but it's leading somewhere. Are you a Lindsay Lohan fan?
Wow, not expecting that.
Yeah, see, it's leading somewhere. It's a quick question, yes or no. So, have you seen Freaky Friday? Have you seen Freaky Friday? So, what you mentioned to me makes me feel like a Freaky Friday movie where, you know how some people love to see that Instagram account of that friend from high school who's like a rep of something. She or he's going to Bangkok, they're going to Amsterdam. Like, oh man, they're traveling so much. And that person wants to be the traveler. And then the traveler's like, man, I just wish I had like a home to go to, like not even a wife or like, but just like a strong friend group that hangs out on Fridays. We grab beers, stuff like that. That's a movie. That's a movie for people today. Like I can definitely see people being like, the grass is greener.
Yeah, because they don't talk about what's going on behind the scenes. Like this is one of the things I like to talk about. Like, see, when I come on my streams, generally speaking, like if I'm having a good day, I let the people know. If I'm going through a difficult time, I let the people know. You know what I mean? Like I don't hide like and pretend like, oh, everything's great, everything's wonderful, because that's not what life is. Life is a combination of good and bad, and even in the like greatest jobs ever or the greatest lifestyles ever, there's parts that suck, and that's why it works for some people and doesn't work for others. It depends on what you are looking for in life. You know, what you aspire for. I think a good thing to keep in mind is to just keep your needs and desires relatively simple if you can, and that will generally mean that you'll be mostly positive or content in most situations. But I get it, man. It's hard. Like I've got all these dreams and goals and things I'm working towards, and a lot of the time I feel stagnation or feel like I'm not getting anywhere with it, and it can bring you down. It really can. And like if you flip it to the example you gave, like if you desperately want to travel and you're just stuck, like I feel that I've got itchy feet right now. It's been a while since I've traveled, and I'd like to. And what's stopping me? Money. And it's so dumb. It's just like, but um, I'm glad I at least did it, and I have been some places.
Yeah. I mean, at least it's money. I mean, other people use lame excuses like I don't want to list the other excuses because then people will be like, oh, those are valid excuses. No. Like money, unless I've never heard anyone take out a loan to travel. Have you ever heard that before? That would sound crazy to me. Like obviously credit cards, but like that's a completely different thing. But yeah, I totally get that. So before I forget, because I always forget, I don't know why, because I usually have great conversations and then I forget that the people on the show have another end. I'm the type of person who starts looking now for amateur podcasts because I love listening to them. And you probably do the same, right? Just to hear other perspectives. Obviously, you're on a much more seasoned level. The question I'm asking is, in 5 years, where do you see yourself at as a podcaster?
You know, sorry, just on a side note, I'm planning some content for my Patreon, right? And it's about job interviews and that shitty questions that they ask.
Let me guess, this is one of those shitty questions, right?
Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years, pal? Where do I see the podcast?
I think it's a shitty job question. Definitely a shitty job question because it's like, what do you want? What do you want me to say to that? Like, here at the company, like bleeding for you guys?
Well, in a job situation, it's look, so much changes. I mean, I think that question probably applied in like 50s when like, or maybe you could go from production assistant to head of production. Like, yeah, sure, but like now people don't stay in a job much longer than 6 months to a year. So
yeah, like the 2 year rule.
Yeah, yeah, or it's like it's like hopefully not fucking working here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, no, it is a good question. So where I see the podcast in 5 years, yeah, that's the question.
Can I retract it and not have you answer it?
I'll answer. I'll give you an honest answer.
Okay.
No, I set a goal of doing the show for 10 years because I started in 2020 and I got about a year in. And I thought, oh, it'd be cool to just kind of cover a decade. I thought, well, that'd be a cool concept. And already 3 years in, like so much has changed. I looked at like my life and how it was going and different things that were at play whilst I was still managing that show. And even now, my life is so tumultuous and unpredictable and just all over the shop. But the podcast is a constant, and I like that. It's interesting because it's hard to have constants in your life. You just think a change in how much life changes. I just see the show going. I don't know. I think I stopped expecting it to grow. I think like I thought like, oh, like I remember when I changed to like video and I started doing like clips and stuff. I was like, oh, something will go viral and it'll pop off. And I got a few clips that got some attention, but it didn't lead anywhere. Because it's very thankless trying to build a following online. It's hard and there's so much out there. And I think the biggest thing that can really help a podcast is to keep going. Because most people give up. You get to like 50 episodes, 100 episodes, 200. I mean, I remember I went on someone's show who'd been doing it like 7 or 8 years. And I told them at that point that I was going like 2 years. And they were like, wow, well, most shows, let's see where you're at 3 years, because most people give up then. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, that's what the statistics say. Because I get it. You keep doing it. It's a lot of work and you get like not very much in return. And that can be quite demotivating, demoralizing potentially. But again, I go back to what I said earlier about, well, why are you doing the show? If your goal is to just make money and get popular or whatever, famous or whatever the fuck, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. Because you might get those things, but then your show will suffer as a result because you've not got a clear plan. Like your plan is just like, I'll give you an example. Yeah, I'll put it on blast. So the H3H3 podcast. I'm sure you've probably heard of that, right? Maybe not.
Probably not. No, I don't know why I haven't heard it. Too many celebrities clapping up the front.
I don't like to normally criticize because I like to focus on more positive stuff. But I think this is a fair criticism, and I think maybe even they would agree themselves. Maybe not. They had their own YouTube channel. They that's where they grew their following, and then like most people, they jumped on the Pang podcast bandwagon, and then that's become their main source of content now. And they've still got a big following. So props to them for that. They've established a brand. They've got sponsors. They've got all this stuff, but they are rapidly and steadily declining in popularity. And I think a lot of it. Some of it comes down to controversies and hypocrisies and stuff like that. And again, that's a whole podcast right there. Loads of talented people have done videos, essays on this explaining why. But from just looking at the content itself and just forgetting all the controversy for a second, I think the biggest problem with it is it comes across a little lazy. Like they have the production value, they have a whole team of people there. It looks great. It's by all intents and purposes, it should do well. But when I sit and look at it at a glance, I just see people just sitting there kind of lazily, just going like, oh yeah, just pull that up on the screen. Yeah.
Punching the clock.
Yeah, like, oh, that's funny. Or like, it doesn't feel like they want to be there, like they care. Like when I watch, say, like a Joe Rogan episode, like I know, again, controversial, but one thing you can't knock the guy on is he's
enthusiastic.
Yeah, like he's been doing it how many years and he's still into it. And that's how I feel. Like I love doing podcasting because it's interesting. I started a podcast because I wanted to. I always wanted to start a podcast. I'd always been a fan of them. And I just, when the opportunity came, I was like, yeah, let's do it. And still now, I think I learned a lot through doing it. And it's still interesting to me. I don't know. I guess maybe it's because I just like to have good conversations.
Yeah.
And you walk away from it and you've had a good conversation. You feel better for it. You feel like you learned something. You feel like this was special. This is something, I can look back on and be proud of, and I don't know. I think like podcasting is not an endeavor that you can really be lazy in, or you can sort of just put out like I remember. Okay, another shout out. There's a show called Who Are These Podcasts, right? And if you're a podcaster, I really recommend listening to this show. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a group of guys who tear apart podcasts, and they do celebrate good podcasts too, but they mostly tear apart bad podcasts, and they check in with certain people. They have
this fascinates me, and you'll have to remind me of this at the end because.
And I will say sometimes those guys make some pretty outrageous jokes and they go a little bit too far for my liking, but I still really respect what they do. And I think it's important because they put people on blast a lot of the time for things like being lazy or, kind of expecting a lot of your audience, but not giving your audience a lot. Like, for the people that invest in me and care in what I do, I make sure to absolutely deliver the best quality every single time. It doesn't matter that there's 5 or 10 people listening. Those 5 or 10 people care about what you're doing. Do you know how difficult it is? And I'm talking just to the audience now, to keep someone's attention for more than a couple of minutes in this world. It's harder than it ever has been right now. I mean, you look at the
I think you're being very inflated with 5 and 10. I think 5 is like a max. Like 2 minutes is amazing. Like 2 minutes, like
that's why TikTok's so successful. I mean, it's like they recommend your content shouldn't be any longer than like 10, 20 seconds long.
I know.
And so
it's just so sad.
Like
they throw 2 videos on too. It's not just one video now. You know how like they have a video on the top and now they have a video of like you watching somebody do calligraphy on the bottom, just in case you get bored of the top video so you don't scroll past. I think that's like crazy.
Well, that's like sensory overload. Like, as much as I think that there is always a place for short form content, I do wonder about its impact on the brain. I mean, I've taken a step back recently. And I've started doing more reading, getting out there more, spending time away from this, because I thought it would help give me more to talk about, to be honest. And also, I thought it was healthier. And it's part of who I am. I like to have long conversations and talk at length. And I'm not that quick guy. Those people, there's an audience for that, and they're really good at that, and that's what they do. That's not me. But I do worry about that sort of content. I feel like it's difficult to build an audience of people that truly care about you. Like, for instance, when I left TikTok, because I had like a following there, right? And I stopped, like, I still post clips there, but I don't live stream there anymore. And it's a long story as to why. But I got sick of it. I got sick of the platform and the fact that it's all just about money and just very hypocritical. And there's a lot of just negativity on there. There is positivity there, but mostly it's just and I was just like sick of it. But I found it very telling that there was a bunch of people that moved over to Twitch with me. And I thank those people, and I cannot thank them enough for their support and their loyalty and just being invested in me, right? But there are a lot of people that didn't. And I respect that decision. But I also understand that, like, they weren't fans of me. They were just there because it's something to do. Like, I remember a good example of what I mean is, like, you'd be scrolling, right? And they call it on TikTok, they call it the FYP, the For You page, right? And every now and again, when I was doing the live streams, I'd hear someone go, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you on my FYP in so long. Where have you been?" It's like, I've been here the whole time. I've been creating the whole time. But TikTok is not a platform that's designed to help creators. It's not like all these. Well, it's like, YouTube and Twitch and all these places are encouraging you to form a community, and they're trying to help you build that, right? Don't get me wrong, I know they're about money as well, right? I'm not an idiot, but TikTok is like really over the top.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to make money, and this one's more of a churn, like a churning machine, whereas YouTube's is like a structure, like a constant building.
I can't get on board with the whole concept of, like, I come on the app and they're like, "Oh, do a creator battle," and I look up what that is, and it's like, "Oh, so you go against someone else and you battle for, like, whatever, for gifts from your audience. You push your audience to give you gifts, and whoever gets gifted the most wins." And I'm like, how about doing some good content? And then if people, like, want to donate to you, then great. I guess it's like busking in a sense. Like, when someone subscribes to me on Patreon or Twitch, like, I'm so grateful for that. Not just because, oh great, they've sent me some money, that's going to help me, but because of what it represents.
Yeah.
That person is because they believe in what I do and they support what I do, and they see in that, and they've taken their time to listen to a podcast, check out the paper, go on a live stream.
It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah.
People on the short form platforms, they're not about that. They're just trying to push you to like, TikTok takes like 70% cut.
Yeah.
So of course they push you and they want you. Like I keep getting messages every time I log in there saying like, "Oh, we miss you. Oh, please come and live stream." And I'm like, "Fuck you!" Like, you know what I mean? How about
Yeah.
making your platform not only about money and exploitation? Maybe then I'll come back.
It's like being a cam girl and not getting naked. You know what I mean? Like they want you to constantly be filming, but like bringing people to the app. You know what I mean? Like, come see this show. Come see this show. Like, just constantly pulling viewers to you.
Yeah, and I think that's the disappointing thing as well. Like I look at it a lot like you see like how phone companies kind of neglect their existing customers that give the best deals to like the new customers. I
Yeah.
feel it's a bit like if you neglect the people that care about you, like eventually those people are just not going to follow you and watch you anymore. Like I've got some followers who've been following me for years because I made them feel appreciated, and
Yeah.
I
Part of a community. Like,
right, exactly,
yeah.
and I let them know all the time how much I appreciate them, and I, you know, sometimes I'll even do streams or create content when, to be honest, I'm not in the greatest headspace, but I want to bring some light in their lives because they brought some light in mine, and I feel a sense of responsibility, and I like that, and I think there's a lot to be said for like working on something and putting your best effort into it to make it the best that it can be over time. I mean, when you look back at this podcast over the years, you'll look at not only a growth of a thing, but the growth of yourself and what you gain. And you know, it's like the expression goes, you get what you put in, man.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know if you have the same feeling about college, but it's like, oh man, I could have done that better. Like, I should have like I mean, I wasn't a partier. I was more of a everything else but party, like watching TV, like going to play basketball or soccer or stuff like that. And I was like, I should have been studying. Like, why didn't I do that? It was like, obviously it could be different for you, like a different aspect of your life, but I, I don't know.
College is supposed to be about the experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
You do your whole fucking work. You know what I mean?
To be
Like,
fair, it's I over here it's a broken system. Um, but it's hard to define what you want to be at such a young age, you know? Like you said, you should travel for 4 years, decide what type of person you are actually able to contribute to society and enjoy yourself while you're doing. I know that people need to be insurance agents, they need to be crossing guards, like stuff you don't like to be, but it goes to the fact that are you a person who can take a 9 to 5 from Monday to Friday or whatever schedule your country's working on? Like, I know they're trying to push the 4 day and 3 day work week everywhere now, but like, are you a person who punches the clock and then after it, you enjoy your hobbies like to the fullest extent? Or are you the person who kind of enjoys your job? I know no one enjoys their job 100%. And if they do, like, I don't know, somehow they're finding loopholes with like paying bills.
I mean, like I love acting. I never feel like it's a chore.
What if
I
you're
love
filling
it.
out paperwork?
Well, it's all part of the process, man. I mean, I don't really have to fill out a lot of paperwork with acting, to be honest.
But I'm saying there's got to be some parts you don't enjoy though,
No, I
like
love all.
waiting in line, like
Yeah, but there's
there's
always
got to be
something.
like a 5 or 10% part.
There's
That's all
always
I'm saying.
there's always something you can do. You can talk to people, make connections, experience it. When I'm stuck in an office, that's the reality. It's not going to change. The only thing that might change is, oh, we got a dodgy client today, or oh, this person got fired today. Like, wow, you know. Same in customer service. You know, oh, there was this rude customer, or oh, I don't know, this food came out cold. Like, it's just not very inspiring, you know. But listen, it depends because it depends what your passion is. You know, like if you're passionate about something in life, you'll probably love all parts of it, even the parts that you don't enjoy as much, because it's all part of the same thing. Like I said earlier, I'm not a big fan of editing, but to be honest, when I'm sitting there doing it, like I think I used to resent it, but then I changed my attitude, and now I kind of I just sit there feeling proud, like I did this thing, and now other people are going to get to experience it too, and I'm proud of this thing.
You gave me another perspective by it's a contrast. It's just like all those big journeys like Odysseus and all those things, like they had bad moments, but the bad moments outweigh, like they show you how good the good moments are. You know what I mean? Like if you've ever had a bad job and you've had good jobs, how often do you like what are your relationships with those coworkers that you still talk to compared to the bad job to the good job? Because in the bad job with like the horrible boss, like those people are like sometimes stronger than their family members. You know what I mean? Like they've been through it. They've had like strong bonds. And I think that's one of the reasons. It's the hard contrast and the stuff they've been together like through. Because I've had like jobs where you're just punching the clock and I don't remember their names at all. But the hard jobs, I remember them because they were, this is bad reference, but World War II, we were in the trenches together. Like we've been in it.
True. There is elements to that. Yeah. I remember one job I did like really, really very briefly, and I actually physically had to punch in with like my hands. It was weird.
And we do fingerprints
was,
at my work, so I get that.
Yeah, I don't like that, man. I remember like it was supposed to be a Christmas temp job, and I quit before Christmas. It was like 2.5 months, and
when
remember
did you
like,
start? Like 5 days before?
like I don't know, early October.
Oh, okay.
Like
I thought this was just like a Christmas type job, like you were helping, like I don't know.
No, well, I mean, it's like sometimes they start earlier, don't they? Like probably like October, November,
Mm-hmm.
Christmas like expands constantly, don't they? Like the shops will wheel out as early as they can. I never forget one time I was working in the supermarket and they had what was it like the remnants of summer, Halloween, and on the final end was like Christmas stuff.
The sale rack, basically.
Yeah, and it was like I don't know, August, September. I'm like, really? Christmas stuff in August? You guys nuts? But I don't know. You know, they get out as early as they can. Like Christmas starts when we decide.
Yeah.
Starts.
What is something that your parents did that you'd like to pass on to a next generation? And what is something that either A, you do completely differently, or B, that you won't do that your parents did?
I would have like taken more risks when I was younger and not been so afraid. But it's very easy to look back hindsight because the man I am today, I had to build and become this person.
Yeah, it's like a paradox.
And when I look back at who I used to be, I was just like a scared boy. You know, even like 5 years ago, like, I was a very different person. They say like the essence of you never changes, but like you change all the time. You know, like if you've ever watched like Doctor Who, I think that's a good interpretation.
Yeah,
like
it's like when people say you're shy. I
right.
don't get. I hate when people say you're shy. I feel like, or sorry, I hate when people say shy is a characteristic. I believe that's a like a state you can be in, but I don't like you as a person. I feel like they just don't know you or they're not coming out. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt your answer. Keep going.
Maybe you're right. I don't know.
But maybe I've not met enough people.
No, I mean, I know people like that they don't talk a lot, and sometimes they come out of this show. Sometimes they never do. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that, you know. I guess maybe the issue is that like shy is considered a negative thing, isn't it? Whereas I don't know that it's really necessarily a negative thing. But you're right, it can be a state. Like might surprise you, but I am really into that. I can be extroverted, and I often am because I understand that that's the way the world works. But you know, I like after having gone out and done things, I like my home time. But I think that's another thing as well. Is introversion is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean being antisocial or not talking to people. It means you need time with yourself after having gone out and done things. You need to rest, like your body like demands it. And to be honest, the last couple of years, especially like 3, 4 years of my life, I've had a lot more time to think and reflect and be kind of introspective, and that's enabled me to look at like my life so far and kind of analyze who I am, who I was. And so, like with the question, would I have done things differently? Yeah, if I had the knowledge, but I didn't. And in those moments, I panicked a lot. I worried a lot. Now I'm better with, for instance, like I'm trying to find work right now. Stressful situation. I don't know when I'm going to pay the bills and all that stuff, right? But it'll be fine. I know it will because I've been through this before. I've been through way worse than this. This is like just another day in the life, and it's you you do what you can and you don't worry about tomorrow. You just worry about today and you do what you can and try not to live in a state of worry, because it doesn't exist. The things you worry about don't exist. The only thing that exists is what is in front of you right now in this second, and everything else is just your mind making up shit. But anyway, the whole parents thing. Um, I think maybe like the freedom to be yourself. One thing my parents never did was they never tried to make me into someone I wasn't. They gave me a lot of freedom, maybe too much freedom. But, I never, over the years, I met people who were like, oh, my parents didn't let me do this, they didn't let me do this. And I never had that issue. And I think it made me better as a result because I didn't rebel as a result,
Yeah.
There was a time rebellion, I suppose, a normal amount, but nothing really. I was a good kid for the most part, I think. I was so told. And I think that's important in later life, in adult life, because it prevents you from like going out and making the wrong decisions. Like, for example, when it came to like drug taking, I experimented like most people, but I was sensible enough to know, what, this is a bad move. This could end in something really, really bad. And I considered my prospects and everything, and I walked away from those things. Like that was my choice and decision as a teenager. And I don't know that necessarily many teenagers always think that way, because when you're a teenager and you're very impulsive, it's emotion, it's going with the flow. It's there's a lot of factors, and you're just it's a whirlwind of emotion. You
Mm-hmm.
tend to go. But I had like a sense of conscious awareness, I think, at that age, and I tend to think that came from my parents. Um, and I think that's an important thing for us all to have, and definitely for future generations to have, because the freedom to be yourself and to make decisions and to make mistakes as well is what molds you.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be the man I am today if I hadn't have gone through the things I've gone through, like in my 20s, and made the mistakes that I made and learned from them and grew and moved forward. And
Mm-hmm.
like, my family was involved in those things. They just let me be me. And I think it was a good thing. Um, People may disagree. I get it. But again, I do think it depends on the type of person you are as well. That you need to figure out who you are first. There's kind of like a catch 22, but generally speaking, I think parents should have like sort of like a healthy involvement, but not try to control their children. Like just
Mm-hmm.
try to like so they don't do anything that's like self harming or whatever. But ultimately, like let your kids steer the ship.
Yeah. I've learned it's kind of a loaded question because you bring up the thing that's who I am today. And usually people lean, just like we were saying earlier, the grass is greener on the other side. You're like, oh, my parents were really strict, so I wish they were like really like let me do anything I want. And then you've got the other people who like, I wish they would have let me, like they would have put me in soccer and like made sure I stuck with it. You know what I'm saying? Like if people, and
Yeah,
it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell either which way because you don't know.
I think with that though as well is you have to accept that your parents are people.
Yeah.
There has to be a moment where it clicks and you realize like your parents didn't know what they were doing. there's no manual on being a parent. Like there's advice, sure, like your grandparents probably tell them, give them pointers, now there's books and podcasts, but like it's a personal thing you have to work out for yourself. And another thing as well is not everyone's destined to be a parent. Just because you have kids doesn't mean you're going to make a good parent. Like it's a choice. It's the thing that, like, when I look at the people that I know that are parents, I can tell they really love being a parent, and all the hard stuff that comes with it, they were mentally prepared for, and they get through it. They do their best day in day out, but like they knew what was coming and they knew how to deal with it, and they make it, they reinvent it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really the only, I have 2 kids, and that's really the only way is try to make it as fun as possible, just because, I mean, why not? Like I know you're like, there's some tough moments, but think about yourself in this position when you were like that age. Like you're looking at your parents, like you mentioned before, like it's like when you think of your teachers when you're going to school, like you think they live there. You don't think of them as people either. Like you got to think, like, nothing is perfect. These people are trying their best, and you got to think of that point of view, but you're also raising these kids and you're thinking, I got to give them the best I can. Obviously, while keeping myself sane and healthy too. Like you're juggling plates, basically.
That's interesting as well. You spoke about your question before with what's something that you learned from your parents that you would give to the next generation. Something I heard years ago that kind of blew my mind, but it's true, is this concept that like your parents are raising you based on a world that doesn't exist. Because everything that they were taught and know is from a time that doesn't exist. It's in the past.
Exactly.
And even in that moment that they're teaching you, like, okay, if you have kids now and it's the 2020s, well, in 2040, things will be different.
Yeah.
And the same things won't apply. They're a basic. I think as a parent, like, the best thing you can do is like set your kids up with the right sense of values. It's they'll figure out what they want to do in life, and they'll pursue that, and you should do your best to try and support them in that. But like the best thing you can do is give them a set of values. That's the biggest thing my parents ever gave me, was my sense of values and morality. Like that's something I live by. And I know that sounds like a really obvious thing, but you know what? A lot of people I met in life don't live by that. They're very questionable with their morality, or like, and maybe it's my naivety sometimes, but like I'm kind of still surprised when people like they fuck me over or mess around with people I know or whatever. But then I remember, like, people are people. Like people do this. People think it's easier to lie than tell the truth, or they think it's easier to just be disingenuous. And it's just like, no, like it's harder to tell the truth and be real, but it ultimately will lead to a better life for you moving forward, and you'll get a more positive experience. And you know what? Like you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror and actually like who you are. Like I heard another person say a while back about the concept of lying, right? If you never lie, you never have to look over your shoulder. And I just thought that was a great concept. Like, of course. Because these people that lie all the time, they just live in a web of lies and they forget about what they lied about. And it's just like that's. I'd rather just tell the truth, and you think what you think, and because like not everyone's gonna like you, not everyone's gonna be on board with you. But I think as long as the majority of people kind of think you're a decent person, then you're probably doing something right.
Yeah, I think morality all just boils down to the golden rule of treat others like you want to be treated. And if you don't have empathy, I think it just boils down to, are you going to be one to lie to? Are you going to be the one who wants to be like cheated on, or like someone talk crap about you behind your shoulder? That's why, like, whenever I hear someone, I think, even though I do want to listen to that podcast, those podcasts are talking about other podcaster, it's like, would you get, I mean, they probably are completely fine with it because someone's probably done that to them. But
who are these podcasts? They like to have a laugh and a joke and mess around, but the main kind of vibe I get from the show and they've said this as well, because a lot of the time they'll rip apart a podcast and have fun with it. And then sometimes the people who were on that podcast, they hear about it and they're like,
And want to
"Oh,
be
thanks."
on.
Yeah, and they do, and they've become regular guests in some cases because they know how to take a joke, they take it on board. They're like, you know what, this is fair criticism, and they move forward. No one is above criticism, and that's the thing. You have to remember that not all criticism comes from a negative, bad place. Like, for example, you mentioned that comment that I received at the beginning of it, online. The person that commented said something like along the lines of like, "Oh, you know," they said, "We have conversations like this in our basement at 3 a.m." Right, and it was like a 2-minute clip from like an hour and a half long conversation. And I said to this person, I wasn't rude, I was respectful, because this person had been respectful. They weren't rude, they just made a comment. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Maybe they, let's talk about this. So I said, well, this is from a much wider podcast. This is 2 minutes. I don't know how you could really fairly make that observation. And I said, like, my show is structured and planned and isn't like a chaos. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand that there's shows out there like that, and yeah, they're infuriating. And that's why when people say the word, "Oh, I've got a podcast, I'm doing a podcast," there's so much like, oh, like, because there's all these trends that exist in podcasting that are bad. Like, for instance, male podcasters. I've heard people say like, "Oh, man with a podcast, that's a red flag," because there's a lot of male podcasters out there that that they'll do a show and it'll be like heavily misogynistic. It'll be like a group of guys or whatever, just like being really misogynistic and like, oh, like, we're bros, man, we're bros. And it's just like really just sad to say. And it gives, but the point is, it gives like guys like us a bad name because it's like we're trying to do something like genuine and positive, and it's like, oh, but then these trends exist and they're just out there, and you just have to kind of do your own thing, really, and make just focus.
It basically have blinders and just keep doing what makes you happy, like you. Yeah,
I think the thing with Who Are These Podcasters, they do a show, right? It's a show. It's not just a podcast. It's a show, and they have fun, but it's structured. And I think they're fair with a lot of their criticism. Like, yeah, maybe they go a little bit too far with like, they say slurs, they say different things. It's a bit like, don't know about that. But their criticisms are often fair. Like in one of the more recent episodes, they criticized like a dating podcast, I think, that had like a massive following, like millions, right? And they were having a go at like some of the kind of laziness in like some of the editing, and I was like, yeah, I was quite surprised about that too. Because like, for example, if I have like a podcast and there's like a sizable gap where there's like loads of dead air or whatever, like I will edit that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave it there. I'll only leave it there if it's like actually
like there's some purpose to it. Like it has something to it. Yeah. Because it takes like 5 seconds to clip it out.
Right. But like, there's so many people that are not willing to do that. And like one example I wanted to give from earlier was like, there's shows that they've criticized in the past where the guest has said something like, sorry, the show has said something like, "Oh, we just put out any old slop and our listeners enjoy it." And I'm like, no, what do you mean any old slop? Like, if I've okay, this is 100% true, right? I don't know why. Sorry, this is a side note. Why do people say that? This is 100% true. I've been lying this whole time.
Yeah, my boss says that, and he's French, and he's just like, "So you were lying to me all those other times?"
Brilliant. Yeah, no, like I've recorded shows before, like standalone episodes where it's just me, and it sucked. And I was like, I can't put it out. So I deleted it and I got rid of it. And bear in mind, I've sat there for an hour speaking to a camera. That's an hour of my life I'll never get back. But I decided that wasn't good enough for the people that sit down and listen to my show and expect good quality.
I tried that. I deleted it immediately too. I was just like, nobody just wants to hear me talk in my head.
Well, I mean, that's relative. Because again, you've already been self-deprecating earlier in the show. So I think that you just need to be not so hard on yourself and be a bit nicer, because you're clearly good at what you do. So you just need to have more confidence in yourself, man.
That's true.
But when it comes to what we're doing here, like, I think you have to set the bar high. You have to be like, this is what I expect of myself. And if it doesn't hit this level, it's not good enough for my viewers. And I think, especially when you get to the top and you get like, oh, I'd give anything to be sponsored and make money from this. Are you kidding? And if I got to that point and now, oh, I'll just put out any old slot, like, no, that's disgraceful.
I mean,
And
it's kind of counterproductive. It's like I worked this hard, so I just give up. You know what I mean? Like, why am I going to degrade the quality of my work once I like? What's the point of that?
Dude, I always think about like if I had like a studio, because obviously like my dreams are like to have a studio and build it up and do all this different stuff with it, right? I would just be like, oh great, bigger and better. Let's go even further. Let's see how far we can take this. Let's do a fucking show in like, I don't know, the Himalayas. And it'll be just me and whoever on the mountainside sitting having a conversation. Like, fuck yeah. Like, why not? Let's see where we can take this. Why does it have to be once you get to a point where you make money, oh, okay, now we can just sit back and be lazy? Unacceptable. I maybe it's just my own mindset, but like I can't ever imagine.
You have a good mindset, because that's not even, that's just a good mindset as a person who wants to evolve, is a weird word, just grow. Just because I work at an engineering company, and the engineering companies I see that don't succeed are the ones who just try to make money. I know that sounds stupid, but it's the people who invest in their people, buy good equipment, and they keep doing that with profits. It's like, why are you just trying to make, you're just trying to print money, and the money is going to go away at some point. But if you stop trying to get better and improve your product, what's the point of living? Like, you're buying money to buy something that's going to satisfy you for what, like a month or something like that. And if you don't just keep on putting hours in or trying to improve upon your, I love not multitasking. I've never found a good Swiss Army knives, Renaissance men, like people who just try to improve their catalog of skills or improve upon their skills. Like, why not? Like, do you not respect yourself? That's my opinion. Like, if I see people and they're just like, even though I've been at the same job for 10 years, but I've never stopped trying to improve upon my skills, at least there and outside of work. And I just baffled by people who just repeat. That's all.
You know, I did a show on this a while back. Multi-potentialite and telepathy, or multi-potentiality and telepathy. And it speaks directly about.
That's a sexy word, by the way. That's a sexier word than any of the words I've used.
You mentioned the Renaissance man. That comes from that. Like,
the quote, "Jack of all trades, but a master of none," and then everyone forgets the next part.
A longer phrase, but it's like back in the day, a Renaissance man, that was the expectation. You were expected to speak several languages, play an instrument, have an interest and intellect in, philosophy, history, sciences, etc. That was the expectation. And then obviously Industrial Revolution, all these things came along, and suddenly people are masters of one craft because it's considered that skills are more valuable. And I still think to this day they are valuable. Like, if you have an electrician is always going to be a valuable resource. And the craftsman, like, it's a skill set you have to learn, and it's still there. But now we've kind of come full circle where in typical jobs they expect you to do several different things. Like, for instance, I studied in marketing, right? And I see it all the time. Like, even entry-level positions, they want you to do, marketing, sales, customer service, bunch of different things. It's like, but it's marketing. Or it's like, this is a writer's job. Why am I doing all this stuff?
Yeah.
But that's the expectation. And I think that the reason I brought this up, the one thing about doing that show, what it taught me, was that we're all multi-potentialites or polymaths if we want to be. We're all not multi-potentialites because we all do more than one thing. Like, even if you go, oh, well, that's not true, Christian, like, I have this job and I don't do anything else. But it's like, I'm sure that you can draw or write a little, or you've got like some skills or some things that you're good
listening
at.
Skills, taking in information. Yeah. It's like something you don't even think about.
Yeah, there'll be talents that you have, maybe you haven't even discovered them yet, and that makes you a quote unquote multi-potentialite, right? A polymath is just the extension of that, meaning that you're an expert in those fields. You spent time becoming an expert or somewhat intermediate in those spheres. I considered myself to be a multi-potentialite because I didn't consider myself to be an expert in any of the fields that I'm in. You can make an argument that that's to do with again, self-deprecation, a sense of self-worth. It could also just be my mindset is just I want to be bigger and better at all times, and I think that journey is never over. But what I think matters most is, if you're going to take anything from that, is that don't put limitations on yourself. You, as a human being, can do anything. It comes down to putting your mind to it and realizing that, like, there are many different routes in life. And just because you're told that there's only like A, B, and C, like there's other ways to do things. And when you start going outside the box, pushing yourself, pushing the limits of what you can achieve as a person, you'll continue to surprise yourself. And just one final example, like when I started training about a year ago in the gym, this was something that I returned to after years of being away from it. And this time I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this properly. You know, I'm going to really like actually like do the diet, do the trainings, like learn from people, you know, and change it up every once in a while. And a year later, it's become part of my life. It's part of a lifestyle. I go 3 times a week. The work's there, and it's always there. And gym is brilliant, or just working out in general, because it teaches you so many life lessons, and it teaches you so much about yourself that you may not have known. It teaches you discipline, consistency, and gives you a greater sense of self-worth. And just like everything else in life, the journey is never over. You never complete gym. Gym never ends. You know, you don't get to like level 2 and then that's it, that's the end of the game. But no, it just goes on forever. But that's brilliant, because life has so many beginnings and endings, right? But as long as you're here alive doing things, the journey never stops. So just keep going and keep trying and see where you can take yourself.
Well, that's the best part, because I mean, you watch all these movies and stuff like that, and it's all about the journey. I mean, if you stop the journey, where's the fun in that? Like, it's just, it's over.
That's why I live in this moment right now. Like, I realize like I'm not where I want to be in life, but like I still love life. I still get excited. Like whenever there's an opportunity to do something different. Like one thing I've changed recently is like if there's opportunities to go out,
You always say yes. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, if I got the money, I've got or whatever, like I'll just go, even if I don't really feel like it. I'm like, I mean, it beats being at home. I know what to expect at home. I don't know what to expect going out there.
Yeah.
So just put stuff out there, and who knows who you can meet, what you can discover, where life could be.
Yeah. So this will probably be the last thing. I just had a second kid in November, and like everyone's telling me like, man, you still like, we're impressed with you. You guys still like go to stuff. I'm like, yeah, like why wouldn't I? Like I've got 2 kids. It just isn't, I'm not like, it just baffles me that people say that, just because I'm like, yeah, I have kids. My kids enjoy stuff too. It's not like I need to stay at home with them. Like they're humans, by the way. They like sunlight. They like enjoying things. Like they do need to sleep and eat more, but so do I.
I think it comes down to like mindset, doesn't it? I know I have a friend who, she's a businesswoman. She has multiple kids. She does a bunch of different things, and she juggles it all really well. And I think she's amazing. But like at the end of the day, she's not an anomaly. There's a lot of people like that. There's plenty of parents out there that can do it. Like I think if your life is your kids, then that's what it will be, right? And I'm not criticizing that. Like, you know, to each their own, right? But that's where that mindset comes from. If you're a person who has a lot of different things they want to do, or just other things they want to do besides being a parent, you can do that. You know, there's nothing stopping you. It's just it will be a bit more difficult because obviously you've got to be there for your kids. But the beauty, I suppose, of being in a relationship is, you know, you've got another person to bounce off. You can juggle it, and if you've got friends, family, whatever, you can lean on them and whatever, go on date night, go for a break, do these things. But I think much like how I outlined with Jim, it's about taking the effort to do that, not getting lazy. It's very easy to sit there and get lazy and just be like, oh, we're kind of stuck in this. Let's just like see it happen. And then you see people like whatever, they get out of weight, or they just stop taking care of themselves. They get resentful. They get bitter. It's like, well, you allow this to happen.
Yeah.
I understand being like overworked and this. I don't have children, but I know that it's stressful, and I've seen it through my siblings, through my friends. I understand, but I'm not beginning to.
Are you the fun uncle, by the way?
Well, none of my brothers have had kids yet, so they're too young for that. But maybe one day I'll be that. Who knows?
Oh, you said your friends. I'm sorry. I thought you said siblings. I apologize.
Oh, right. Yeah. If there's a will, there's a way, isn't there? I think it really boils down to that. And I think also it's healthier. It's important to have these things and to retain a sense of self, especially when you have children, because your kids are going to be inspired by you and they're going to lead by example. For the most part, it's going to be all about them mimicking what you do, because they probably won't really listen to a lot. That'll sink in later. Here and there, I suppose it depends how much they're engaged with you, but they definitely mimic what you do.
Oh yeah, I mean, people just don't understand how much. I mean, they watch you not 24/7, but all the time. Like, you're their role model. You're their person. I mean, why wouldn't they? Like, it's just natural nature to mimic. And what's that word? Something breeds causality, closeness. Like, they see you all the time. They're your lifeline, or you're their lifeline. But yeah, but I'll let you go. Thank you again.
Yeah.
And keep chugging.
You too, man.
See ya.
See you soon.
If you like this week's episode of People More Interesting Than Me, please follow me on Apple Podcasts so you won't